Are you planning to hike the 90-mile Wonderland Trail in Mount Rainier National Park? Well, lucky you, because in my humble opinion, this trail really lives up to its name. This trail circles around Mount Rainier, giving incredible views, featuring lush rainforests and lots of water, including waterfalls, and it's well built and well maintained. I loved it so much that I really want to go back and do it again sometime. But anyway, if you're planning to go out there and you're wondering how to do so, let's talk about logistics. First and foremost, you're gonna need a permit, and permits are competitive. There are two ways that you can go about getting permits. Number one is through a lottery on recreation.gov, and number two is through a walk-up permit at the ranger stations in the national park. 2/3 of the permits are given out via recreation.gov, and the other third are reserved for walk-up permits. Permits are available for this hike from late May until early October. Some roads in the park do close seasonally, and of course this is in the mountains, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume there's still a decent amount of snow in probably May and June. I don't live in Washington, so I can't guarantee that, but just from my experiences living in Colorado and having a lot of experience in the mountains, that's just my guess. If you want to get the permit through recreation.gov, you're going to have to enter the lottery. In 2023, the lottery opened around February 21st and closed around March 7th. So I'm just going to assume that each year the lottery probably opens somewhere around mid-February and closes around early to mid-March. So make sure that you're signing up for the lottery during that time. About a week after the lottery closes, people are notified as to whether they won or lost the lottery. It took me 2 tries to win the lottery, and this year when I did the Wonderland Trail, I went in for the lottery, as did my friend Moss, as did my friend Ibex, and I was the only person who actually won the lottery. If you win, you'll be notified and you'll be given a date and a time that you can get onto recreation.gov to actually go get your permits. By the way, these are called Mount Rainier National Park Wilderness and Climbing Permits. That's the lottery that you enter. Once it's your date and time for the lottery, you sign on as soon as you can because it is competitive. And then you have to actually book your campsites for however many people that you have in your group for each night that you're gonna be out there. So you're gonna need to know your full itinerary going in. And if your experience is anything like mine, then you're gonna get to like night 3 or night 4 and be like, oh shoot, there are no campsites available. I'm gonna have to start over. So it may actually take you a few tries to get each night of your itinerary booked. And I would just go in assuming that you're probably not gonna get your ideal dates or ideal campsites, and you're gonna have to play in there a little bit to make Sorry, I'm watching Lena, the golden retriever. She just came back inside and she hears me talking. So she's got to run over. So that's what you just heard. Anyway, so it's probably going to take you a few tries to actually get all your nights booked in the system. And don't be discouraged if your number 1 dates aren't available. Just have some backups in mind and be flexible about where you're actually going to be sleeping, because some campsites, of course, are more competitive than others. For each permit, for a normal permit, you can have up to 5 people and 3 tents. There are also group permits available. There are some group campsites for groups of 6 to 12. Once you have all of your campsites booked, your trip ready to go, something to keep in mind is just that when you arrive at the park, you are gonna have to actually go in person to a ranger station to pick up your permit. It's not one of those things where you can just print it off online. You have to physically go to the ranger station to get your permit. If you don't win the lottery, all hope is now lost, because like I said, 1/3 of permits are reserved for walk-up permits. So that means that you will actually go to the park, and as soon as the ranger station's open, you wanna be at a ranger station and ask if you can book a Wonderland Trail permit for that week. I'm not totally sure about this, but I'm also pretty sure that you can watch recreation.gov for cancellations. If people cancel their permits, I'm sure that they open up in the system. But a lot of people go out there not to do necessarily the entire Wonderland Trail, but just for a couple of nights. So even if there are cancellations, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to get an entire Wonderland Trail itinerary. So if you don't win the lottery, your best bet would probably be, if you have some flexibility, to actually go to the park, try to get there, like I said, right when the ranger station opens, and try to book an itinerary that way. Something that I found really helpful both for booking my campsites and for navigation while on trail was buying and downloading the Far Out trail guide for the Wonderland Trail in advance. So I was looking at the campsites as I was in there booking. Of course, I had an idea going in which campsites I wanted, but because I would, get to a night and there wouldn't be any available and I'd have to pick something else, it was really helpful to have that Far Out guide right in front of me so that I could actually see how far ahead the next campsites were and if there were other alternatives. In terms of actually getting to the park, Mount Rainier National Park is pretty near Seattle. My friends and I flew into Seattle and we stayed there for a night. And when we headed to the park, it was only a little bit over an hour's drive to get there. I was not able to find any shuttles or anything to the park. So we just rented a car and we kind of found that that was really our only option. Split among 3 of us though, it really wasn't a big deal. And my friend Moss agreed to drive the car because she's a professional bus driver. So she's an old pro when it comes to driving, but really it was an easy drive from Seattle. We went and picked our permits up at the Carbon River Ranger Station. It was about an hour and 10 minutes from where we were staying. And then we had about another 45-minute drive to the trailhead where we were starting the hike, which was at Mowich Lake. Most people start their trek at the Longmire Wilderness Information Center, but the trail is a loop, so you can really start at any trailhead on the trail. Don't feel like you're bound by starting at Longmire, especially if Longmire is not available on the dates that you want to start your trek. And most people apparently do the hike clockwise for whatever reason. My friends and I did it counterclockwise. We had a great time, no complaints. So either way is fine, in my opinion. I found the trail to be really well maintained, really well marked, and pretty easy to follow. So I didn't necessarily need to be using my Far Out all the time to navigate. Some trails are harder than others to figure out where you're going. This one was pretty easy, but for safety reasons, I always like to personally have some sort of GPS app, usually Far Out, sometimes All Trails. I know some people like Gaia, just to be on the safe side. And then if there is an area that's confusing, it's easier just to pull out the app and see exactly which way I'm supposed to go instead of doing some extra miles when I don't need to. Because this is a national park, there is a cost to get into the park. In Mount Rainier National Park, at least in 2023, the cost is $30. Obviously, if you have a park pass, like the America the Beautiful Pass, you can use that to get into the park. And then the actual permit cost me $20. If you don't want to carry all of your food with you for the Wonderland Trail, do not fret, because there are actually 3 points along the trail that you can stop at in order to resupply. You can send yourself a resupply bucket or other plastic container ahead of time, or you can actually drop it off in person, hand deliver it. They suggest if you're within 2 weeks of your trek and you haven't actually sent it ahead of time, it's better to hand deliver it. But there are 3 points you can send these to, including the Carbon River Ranger Station, the Longmire Wilderness Information Center, and the White River Campground. However, you really can only send these between July and September. You have to have your resupply in a plastic container in order to keep away rodents. I know that when my friends and I were there in late September and early October, things were starting to shut down, and the White River Campground was actually already closed to car campers. Something else to note is that when my friends and I were there in late September and early October, they had already taken down some of the bear poles that they have at some of the campsites. And so during that time, even though most of the time the park does not require bear cans, they were requiring that you have either a bear can or an Ursack. The rest of the year, they ask that you do bring some sort of string or some way to hang your bear bag up on the bear poles that are at the designated campsites. Luckily, I had brought an Ursack with me, but I watched a ranger actually give a bear can to another hiker who hadn't brought a bear can or an Ursack because those poles were already down. I imagine it's kind of a similar experience in the early season before they get the bear poles up at camp. And finally, I just wanted to note that this is, in my opinion, a pretty tough hike. It's well worth it. It's absolutely stunning. I absolutely loved it. But if you're not in fantastic shape or you're not a super experienced hiker, I would just suggest that you take your time completing this hike. My friends and I did it in 5.5 days, but we absolutely could have extended it out longer. And again, if you are not in the best shape or not the most experienced, maybe just take your time and make it a longer trip. Personally, I've been having some knee issues this past year, and the steep ascents and descents were really making them scream at me, so I was really happy to have my trekking poles. I brought along a couple of simple knee braces, and then I also had to bum some ibuprofen off my friend Moz when mine got all wet from the torrential downpours that we experienced out there. All in all, I found this trail to be pretty easy to plan, really easy to navigate. We had really no issues. It was just all very simple compared to some of the other trails that I've done. And I really thoroughly enjoyed this trail. I do have another video coming soon with some tips for hiking the Wonderland Trail. So if you're interested in the Wonderland Trail, make sure you watch out for that video. And I also have an entire series of my Wonderland Trail vlogs that I will put the link to down in the show notes, and I'll put the link up here. So definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more as well. Make sure to subscribe for more hiking, backpacking, and outdoor content. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.